Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. I'm Ty Glenn. Hope you guys are having a great Wednesday. We are going to be recapping all the free agency stuff that went down on Tuesday. So make sure that you stay tuned in to this episode until the end. And for everybody that watches the podcast on YouTube, this will be out on the TG Hockey channel. And I'll repost it to the Hockey Talk with TG podcast YouTube channel. Only reason being is because I put the preview free agency episode out on that channel. So now I'm going to be putting a recap out on that channel. And also another announcement. Friday will be no episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast because it's the 4th of July. So we'll be back on Monday. And for everybody that watches on YouTube, we will be back on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast YouTube channel. So just wanted to throw that out there. But before we go ahead and get started into the NHL Free Agency stuff, do have to report some sad news. Alex Devachel sadly passed away at the age of 93. He is a longtime center for the Detroit Red Wings. He played with them for 24 seasons. He was in the NHL all his 24 seasons. He's played for the Detroit Red Wings. He had 1,281 points in 1,550 games played, 456 goals, 825 assists for 1,281 points and 1,550 games played. He was third in games played, goals, and points. He was fourth in assists. And you guys may know that he most notably played on the production line with Gordie Howe and Ted Lindsay, two other Detroit Red Wings greats. He replaced Sid Abel on that line. He is a three-time Stanley Cup champion, won the Stanley Cup with the Red Wings in 1952, 1954, and 1955. He also won the Lady Byng Memorial Trophy in 1959, 1966, and 1969. And he took home the Lester Patrick Trophy in 1974. And he was the team captain of the Red Wings for 12 years. He wore number 15 and then eventually switched his number to number 10. And then he had his number 10 retired up in the rafters at Joe Louis Arena in 1991. And he was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1977. And he was named one of the NHL's greatest players, top 100 greatest players in 2017. He did coach the Red Wings for a brief, shorter time. Coached him for 4 years after he retired in the NHL from playing with the Red Wings. He was also a coach for the Red Wings for 4 years. And yeah, he was a Detroit Red Wing for life. He was one of the greatest players to play for the Detroit Red Wings and sadly passed away on Tuesday. So I just wanted to report that. My condolences are with the Devachel family and the Red Wings organization. He will be dearly missed. And again, just one of the greatest players to ever play for the Detroit Red Wings. He did a lot. He had a lot of accolades and a lot of achievements during his time in Detroit. Also as a coach as well. So, yeah, sadly passed away at the age of 93. Well, we are going to recap. We're going to get into the NHL free agency stuff that happened on Tuesday, starting with Mitch Marner. Of course, he was introduced to the Vegas Golden Knights. He spoke to the media. He was in a press conference with the VGK Vegas Golden Knights. Of course, the Leafs got Nicholas Raw in return. And I'm pretty excited to watch Mitch Marner as a Golden Knight for next season. Going to be playing on that first line with Ivan Barbashev and Jack Eichel. The Golden Knights are getting a really good player in Mitch Marner. He's a playmaker. He's a top tier talent player. He's a dynamic player. Has a lot of offensive creativity. Just a fun player to watch in NHL. One of my favorite players to watch. Coming off of a career high 102-point season in his final season with the Toronto Maple Leafs. 27 goals, 75 assists for 102 points in 82 games with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Played 9 seasons with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He has 741 points in 657 games played, 221 goals, 520 assists for 741 points in 657 games played. Playoff-wise, 63 points in 70 games, 13 goals, 50 assists for 63 points in 70 games played. And Mitch Marner, obviously, he was emotional. Like I remember during when the Panthers eliminated the Leafs in Game 7, Mitch Marner was emotional in his post-game conference, and he said it was exciting to get to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs. That was his favorite team growing up. Of course, he's from Toronto, and he also said he never took that for granted, and being there in Toronto and playing with his hometown team, never took that for granted. He was emotional in his post-game conference following the Leafs' Game 7 loss to the Florida Panthers in the second round. And he said the same thing in his press conference with the Golden Knights that was aired on NHL Network on Tuesday. So, again, just excited to watch Mitch Marner for this upcoming season. He's going to be wearing number 93. He wore that same number when he was playing for the London Knights of the OHL junior hockey, and now he's going to be wearing that number again, this time for the VGK Vegas Golden Knights. So just wanted to, I know I said that on the preview free agency episode, I just wanted to say it again on the recap episode, so I didn't go too much into that. But moving on from Mitch Marner to Brock Boeser, this was a shock. Brock Boeser, he signs a 7-year, $50.75 million contract deal to stay with the Vancouver Canucks on Tuesday. He had 50 points in 75 games played with the Canucks last season, 25 goals, 25 assists for 50 points in 75 games played with the Canucks last season. He ranks second on the team in goals and points. And this was Canucks general manager Patrick Alvin. Hopefully I pronounced that last name right. If I didn't, please correct me in the comments. This is what Canucks general manager Patrick Alvin had to say on re-signing Brock Boeser. He said this, and I quote, "Brock has been a huge part of our organization, and we are extremely happy to have him back in the fold. He has scored some big goals for our hockey club and has established himself as a very dangerous offensive player. Brock is a leader and culture setting in our locker room, and we're confident he will continue to play an important role for our team moving forward, doing great work both on and off the ice." This will be his 10th NHL season with the Vancouver Canucks, the longest tenure Canuck on the team. And again, just a shock to everybody because we all thought this was going to be the end of Brock Boeser in Vancouver. And I thought it was going to be the end of Brock Boeser in Vancouver because I thought maybe with the Canucks acquiring hometown for Evander Kane from the Edmonton Oilers, I thought maybe he could fill in that void of replacing Brock Boeser if he wasn't going to come back. But turns out the Canucks are bringing him back. Still great secondary scoring though in Evander Kane. And overall in his NHL career, in his 9 seasons with the Vancouver Canucks, Brock Boeser had 434 points in 554 regular season games with the Canucks, 204 goals, 230 assists for 434 points in 554 regular season games. In playoff points wise, 23 points in 29 playoff games, 11 goals, 12 assists for 23 points in 29 playoff games. He had a breakout season with the Canucks in 2023-24 season with a career high 73 points in 81 games played. In the 2023-24 season, 40 goals, 33 assists for 73 points in 81 games played. And of course, he played in 2024 NHL All-Star Game in Toronto. And the Canucks weren't done there. Other players that they signed on free agency day or leading up to free agency day, they signed their goaltender Thatcher Demko to a 3-year, $25.5 million contract deal, and forward Connor Garland to a 6-year, $36 million contract deal. Each one of those contracts will begin at the start of the 2026-27 NHL season, and Thatcher Demko, Connor Garland, each would have been UFAs after the 2025-26 NHL season. So the Canucks got them early, re-signed them early, and now they'll be on the Vancouver Canucks. Thatcher Demko, 3-year contract deal. Connor Garland, 6-year contract deal. We're moving on to another big free agent name in Ivan Provorov as he signs a 7-year, $59.5 million contract deal with the Blue Jackets. He had 33 points in 82 games played for the Blue Jackets last season, 7 goals, 26 assists for 33 points in 82 games played for the Blue Jackets last season. He ranked second on the team with points among defensemen, and he averaged over 23 minutes per game last season. His ice time was second only to Norris Trophy finalist in Zach Werenski. And fun fact, Ivan Provorov missed 0 games last season, and he only missed 3 NHL games since 2016. And Blue Jackets general manager Don Waddell said that he was quote-unquote smart and talented and can play in all situations. He also mentioned that he was a consistent and durable defenseman. And the Blue Jackets also close to making the playoffs last season with a 40, 33, and 9 record. Missed the playoffs only by 2 points. And we talked about on the podcast how this was an emotional season for the Blue Jackets of the passing of Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau, how that was an emotional 2024-25 season because of that. And Blue Jackets, no doubt in mind, they will be a playoff team. They could be another team that I will say will sneak into a wild card spot. They almost did it this year, and I know that they're going to do it next year. They had a great second half of this 2024-25 season, and they're probably going to continue that heading into next season. I know they're going to continue that heading into next season. We'll just have to see how everything will go. And overall, in Ivan Provorov's NHL career, he had 282 points in 696 games played, 77 goals, 205 assists for 282 points in 696 games played. But the Blue Jackets weren't done there. Other offseason moves that they did was they re-signed defenseman Dante Fabro to a 4-year, $16.5 million contract deal and acquired forwards Charlie Coyle and Miles Wood from the Colorado Avalanche. So Blue Jackets were also busy in the offseason. And I know I talked about this on Monday's episode, the Hockey Talk TG podcast. I also mentioned it in the free agency preview episode that I did, but we still got to talk about how great is it to see that the core three of Brad Marchand, Sam Bennett, and Aaron Ekblad are back on the Florida Panthers. Panthers general manager Bill Zito re-signs all three of them. All three were going to be free agents, but somehow, some way, they are still on the Florida Panthers. Sam Bennett and Eric Ekblad signed 8-year contract deals. Brad Marchand signed a 6-year contract deal. And all three of these players had an impact on Florida's Stanley Cup championship run for this year. And it could be a possibility that Florida wins another cup with this core. And it's just a fun fact to point out. Florida's top 10 or core top 10 will be signed to at least 2033. I said this on the preview. I think I said this on the preview episode. So let's take a look at it. Alexander Barkov, team captain of the Florida Panthers. He'll be signed until 2030. Matthew Tkachuk, signed until 2030. Sam Reinhart, signed until 2032. Sam Bennett, signed until 2033. Carter Verhaeghe, signed until 2030. I think 2032, if I'm not mistaken. Brad Marchand, signed until 2031. Anton Lundell, signed until 2030. Seth Jones, signed until 2030. Aaron Ekblad, signed until 2033. And Gustav Forsling, signed until 2032. So, Florida's got a lot of pieces. And like you guys said, like one of you guys said in the comments for my Florida Panthers 2025 Stanley Cup mini movie, Florida's got a lot of weapons. They got a lot of pieces. They got a lot of weapons. A lot of key pieces that helped them on this back-to-back Stanley Cup run. And again, they could win another cup. I can see this core winning another cup in the next sometime soon. They could possibly go back to back to back. We'll just have to see how that will go. But if they do, they will become the third team in the salary cap era to win 3 Stanley Cups. And the salary cap era started in the 2005-2006 NHL season. And only 2 teams have won the cup 3 times in the salary cap era. Starting with my Chicago Blackhawks. We did it in 2010, 2013, 2015. We're the most recent team to do that in the salary cap era. Another team that has accomplished this, the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2009, 2016, and 2017. But hey, if anybody's the real dynasty in the salary cap era, it's the Chicago Blackhawks. I mean, come on. You got Kane, Taves, Keith, Seabrook, Hossa, Crawford, Chalmerson. I could go on and on with that list. We were a real dynasty there. That's the real dynasty in the salary cap era. I'm just saying. But moving on to the Utah Mammoths. Utah Mammoths were another busy team in free agency as they added defenseman Nate Schmidt from the Florida Panthers for Brandon Tanev for the Winnipeg Jets, and goaltender Vika Vanacek on the team. We'll break down all 3 of these contract deals. We'll start with Nate Schmidt. He signed a 3-year, $10.5 million contract deal with the Utah Mammoth. He had 12 points in 23 playoff games to help the Panthers win their second Stanley Cup. He played all 80 regular season games. In the regular season, he only missed 3 NHL games since 2016. General manager of the Utah Mammoth, Chris Armstrong, talked about Nate Schmidt's leadership and quote-unquote warrior presence, and this will be pivotal for mentoring the younger D. Excuse me, the younger D that the Utah Mammoth have. And now we're going to be moving on to Brandon Tanev. Brandon Tanev, he signs a 3-year, $7.5 million contract deal. He had 22 points in 79 games played for the Jets and Kraken. Last season, he had 5 points in 19 games for the Jets after being acquired in a trade with the Kraken on March 7. Of course, he was back on the Winnipeg Jets at the time because before playing for the Kraken, he did play for the Jets before. And then I think he went to Pittsburgh, Seattle. He did play for the Penguins before as well. And then to the Kraken, now back on the Jets. Now on the Utah Mammoth. And Brandon Tanev, he would bring playoff experience. He would bring the grit. He would be in the grind. And he's great on the penalty kill. And he also brings a lot of physicality for the Utah Mammoths. So they're getting a really good, solid depth player in Brandon Tanev on the team. And overall, his NHL career, Brandon Tanev had 180 points in 552 regular season games for the Jets, Penguins, and Kraken. 84 goals, 96 assists for 180 points in 552 games for the Jets, Penguins, and Kraken. He had 14 points in 59 playoff games, 7 goals, 7 assists, 14 points in 59 playoff games for Brandon Tanev. For Vika Vanacek, He signs a 1-year, $1.5 million contract deal with the Utah Mammoth. Taking a look at his record, he was 5-14-4 with a 4.05 goals against average and a .885 save percentage, and 1 shutout this season with the Sharks and Panthers. He served as the backup goalie for Sergei Bobrovsky in the 2025 Stanley Cup playoffs. And, of course, obviously won Stanley Cup with the Florida Panthers. And he will provide the goaltending depth that the Utah Mammoth need to take that next step, because Utah Mammoth was so, well, I wouldn't say so close. They were a little bit close, just a little bit close to making the playoffs last season. They only missed out by 7 points. They were 7 points out of a playoff spot last season. So they were just a little bit, they just need to inch closer and closer. And I think I made a bold prediction before the start of 2024-25 season saying that Utah would make the playoffs. They were 7 points out of the playoff spot. They were called Utah Hockey Club at the time, but now they're called Utah Mammoth, thank God, because I didn't like the name Utah Hockey Club. So, yeah, I like the Utah Mammoth better than Utah Hockey Club. So, yeah, all 3 of these signings will try and help the Utah Mammoth to become a playoff contender for next season or for this upcoming season. We'll just have to see how their second season in the NHL will go. Moving on to another free agent signing in Mikael Granlund, as he signs a 3-year contract deal with the Anaheim Ducks. 66 points in 83 games played for the Sharks and Stars last season. So 22 goals, 44 assists, 66 points in 83 games played for the Sharks and Stars. He had 21 points in 31 games with the Stars after being acquired in a trade on February 1st. So the Ducks obviously traded away Trevor Zegras, and they drafted Roger McQueen. They got Joe Quenneville as their new head coach now. So this is going to be a new Ducks team. They're still in the rebuilding phase, but they get a key depth player in Mikael Granlund. And Ducks general manager Pat Verbeek said that he was a quote-unquote hard worker. He also mentioned that he goes to the hard areas and is not afraid to be a net front presence guy, something that they needed more of, according to Pat Verbeek. And overall, in his NHL career, Mikael Granlund has 610 points in 902 regular season games for the Wild, Predators, Penguins, Sharks, and Stars. 179 goals, 431 assists for 610 points in 902 regular season games, and 42 points in 77 playoff games, 16 goals, 26 assists for 42 points in 77 playoff games. But moving on from the Ducks to the Kings. Now, what I'm about to tell you will probably be the most surprisingly shocking surprise, as Corey Perry signs a 1-year, $3.5 million contract deal with the LA Kings on Tuesday. Now, the only reason why I say it was shocking and surprising because, as you guys know, Corey Perry played for the Anaheim Ducks. And, of course, the Anaheim Ducks had that California rivalry with the LA Kings. And, of course, also the San Jose Sharks. Now, if you were to tell me in 2025 that Corey Perry, or if you were to tell me in general, that Corey Perry will be playing for the LA Kings, I would have said you're crazy, or that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right to me. Corey Perry playing for the LA Kings. Because, again, the Kings have that California rivalry with the Anaheim Ducks. When Corey Perry was playing on the Anaheim Ducks, Kings fans did not like him. Sharks fans did not like him. And it's crazy to think that crazy to say that Corey Perry is now on the LA Kings. And, of course, LA Kings trying to go back to the Stanley Cup final for the first time since 2014. Corey Perry is still chasing another Stanley Cup because he's lost 5 of his past 6 Stanley Cup finals. Of course, most recently being with the Edmonton Oilers in 2025. He's lost 5 of his 6 past Stanley Cup finals, so he's still trying to chase a second Stanley Cup. And I said second Stanley Cup because he won a Stanley Cup before with the Anaheim Ducks in 2007. And of course, the Ducks were taking on the Senators in the 2007 Stanley Cup Finals. Ducks won the Stanley Cup that year. So Corey Perry he's 40 years old now, 41 years old. He's still trying to chase a Stanley Cup. So we'll just have to see how this will work out for him. I can see Corey Perry being a fourth line winger and helping out on the bottom six with his physical play and his abrasive style. He's also a great player for the Kings penalty kill because he is a good penalty killer. He's known for steering the pass. He's known for steering opponents. He's known for leading by example with his veteran presence. So he'll bring that into the LA Kings locker room. And overall in his NHL career, Corey Perry has 935 points in 1,392 regular season games for the Ducks, Stars, Canadiens, Lightning, Blackhawks, and Oilers. 448 goals, 487 assists for 935 points in 1,392 regular season games. 141 points in 237 playoff games, 64 goals, 77 assists for 141 points in 237 playoff games. He's also the third most playoff. He also played the third most playoff games in NHL history behind Chris Chelios with 266 and Nicholas Lidstrom with 263. But moving on to a goaltender now, as Dan Vladar signs a 2-year, $6.7 million contract deal with the Philadelphia Flyers in free agency. And his signing leaves the Flyers with $5.5 million in cap space for the 2025-26 NHL season. And his goaltending record with the Calgary Flames for last season, he was 12-11-6 with a 2.80 goals against average and a .898 save percentage and 2 shutouts in 30 games. 29 of those games he did start with the Calgary Flames. And this is a much needed signing. This is an absolute W from the Philadelphia Flyers. The only reason why I said it's an absolute W from the Philadelphia Flyers is because their goaltending sucked in the 2024-25 season. That's one of the troubles that they had. One of the reasons why they missed out on the playoffs. And Dan Briere brings in a solid, great goalie in Dan Vladar to help that out. I can imagine him probably being the starter goalie and maybe Sam Ersson as the backup goalie. And Ivan Fedotov, he still could remain on the roster, or he could be reassigned to the Lehigh Valley Phantoms of the AHL. That's the Flyers AHL affiliate. So I can imagine Dan Vladar probably being the starter. Maybe Sam Ersson as the backup. Or maybe the other way around. I'm not sure how this goaltending situation will work in the city of brotherly love, but all I can say is this is what the Flyers needed. And I said this on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast before, that I can see the Flyers sneaking into a wild card spot in the playoffs for 2026. So the Flyers, I can see the Flyers being the playoff team in 2026 based on the recent additions that they had this offseason so far. They drafted Porter Martone. They got Trevor Zegras, great player on that top six. Him and Matt Mitchkoff will be going off and hopefully putting up Michigan goals next season. And they also signed Dan Vladar. They get Christian Dvorak. So based on the offseason moves that the Flyers did, I can easily see them being a playoff team. They probably won't finish in the top 3, but they will be a wild card team for sure. For sure, a wild card team. They probably won't finish in the top 3 in the Metro, but I can see Philly being a wild card team for the 2025-26 NHL season with the signs that they did. And I really, again, liked that they went out and got Dan Vladar. They needed to upgrade their goalie situation, and they did just that. Overall, in his NHL career, Dan Vidar has a record of 49, 34, and 16 with a 3.00 goals against average and a .895 save percentage and 4 shutouts in 105 regular season games with the Bruins and Flames. Only played in 2 Stanley Cup playoff games. So, yeah, I'm excited to watch this Flyers team for next season. Excited to watch the new dynamic duo of Trevor Zegras and Matvei Michkov, and not to mention that Trevor Zegras is reunited with his good buddy that he used to play with the Anaheim Ducks and Jamie Drysdale. So, Flyers have a great forward group. Their defense is solid. Goaltending, a much-needed boost now. So, again, I can see this Flyers team making the playoffs in 2026. We'll just have to see how everything will go. Other free agency moves that I won't get too much into depth to that happened on Tuesday. Vladislav Gavrikov signed a 7-year, $49 million contract deal with the Rangers, and the Rangers weren't done there. They traded defenseman Keandre Miller to the Hurricanes for the 2026 second-round pick and a conditional first-round pick in the 2026 or 2027 NHL draft, and defenseman Scott Morrow. And Keandre Miller immediately signed an 8-year, $60 million contract deal with the Hurricanes following that trade. It's kind of funny how the Hurricanes and Rangers, like, there's been former players that used to play for the Hurricanes or that are currently on the Hurricanes that played for the Rangers before, and there's players that used to play for the Rangers that also used to play for the Hurricanes. So it's kind of funny how that works. Like, take Brady Shea, for instance, played for both the Rangers and Hurricanes. He's currently on the Nashville Predators now. Now you got Keandre Miller playing for both the Rangers and Hurricanes. And then there's some more after that. There's some more after that for sure. I wonder if Eric Stahl, I know he played for Carolina. Did Eric Stahl play for the Rangers at all? I know his brother Mark did. Mark Stahl, he did play for the Rangers. So yeah, it's kind of funny how players, they be playing for both the Rangers and Hurricanes. So, yeah, I just want to throw that out there. Ryan McLeod, he signed a 4-year, $20 million contract deal with the Sabres. Tanner Jeannot, he signs a 5-year, $17 million contract deal with the Bruins. Jake Allen signs a 5-year, $9 million contract deal to remain with the Devils. Another trade happening during this NHL Free Agency day, Alex Nedeljkovic traded to the Sharks by the Penguins for a 2028 third-round pick. Sharks weren't done there. They signed defenseman John Klingberg and forward Philip Kurashev to 1-year contract deals. Alex Lyon, he signs a 2-year contract deal with the Sabres. Jonathan Drouin signs, 3-year contract deal with the Islanders. And a coaching hire happened in the offseason as the Dallas Stars hire Glenn Gulazon as their head coach. He used to be an assistant coach for the Edmonton Oilers for 7 seasons. And now he's going to be the head coach of the Dallas Stars. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, as always. Again, to everybody that watches the podcast on YouTube, this will be out on the TG Hockey channel, but I'll repost it to the Hockey Talk with TG podcast YouTube channel on the community tab, so be on the lookout for that. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast YouTube channel, along with the TG Hockey YouTube channel. Make sure that you're following the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. And stay tuned for the Hockey Hangout video that's going to be coming on, or that's going to be happening this week. Just a little thank you guys for 500 subscribers on the TG Hockey channel. Also, I'll be doing a Mitch Marner breakdown video for next week on the TG Hockey channel, so stay tuned for that. Both of you guys have a great rest of your day. Keep God first as always. Be blessed. Enjoy your 4th of July weekend. There will be no episode on Friday because of the 4th of July, so see you guys all back on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on Monday, and take care.